All right. Hi, and welcome today to another episode of the Builder series. Uh, Felix is a WhatsApp based payment platform that enables US based Latino immigrants to send money back to their relatives in Latin America. Combining AI and blockchain technology, sending remittances on Felix is meant to be as easy and as human. We'll talk a little bit more on that as well as possible. Today, we've got co founder and CEO Manuel Godoy joining us to discuss Felix and how USDC is being used to solve what the Crypto Chronicles dub the remittance riddle. Manuel, how are you doing today? And welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sam. I'm doing very well. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, earlier this year, I saw a presentation at one of our events, and it really touched me. I mean, the whole story and what Felix is bringing to the masses, really mainstreaming and making the use and the advantages of blockchain and USDC accessible to so many people. So I'm very excited to share this conversation with the rest of the community and to learn more about Felix and your history. So let's start off at the beginning. I'm really curious. Tell us about your journey into Web3.
Definitely happy to do that. So I'm originally from Venezuela. I came to the U.S. to study engineering at Caltech in Southern California, and I came to this country, for two reasons. Like first, the U.S. With all its flaws, is still that beacon of prosperity around the world. So I came here to follow that American dream. That's first. But then second, in Venezuela, it's a very peculiar country. It's had a very sad history recently, and one of the things that I started to experience growing up there is how government policy destroyed the currency. Mm-hmm. So even from early on, I started to see how important it was to not only allow people to transcend their own country and to allow them to work in other places so they can take care of their families back home, but also how important it is to have access to stable capital, right? And so the currency in the country was destroyed. Inflation was at some point 1,000,000%, and people that didn't have any US dollar accounts or any foreign currency, they saw their life savings just flame out. And even from the early days that I started to see, hearing from friends of mine about how Bitcoin was coming to be, it was something that I was definitely curious at the very least, right? Because it was something that solved that important thing about having a store of value somewhere that was easy to get access to, that wasn't controlled by centralized bodies, and something that would have solved that issue in my home country.
Wow. Well, another connection we have is, I have family from Venezuela. My grandmother went from Venezuela for a trip to Trinidad, so that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
So let's dive a little bit more into the remittance riddle. Can you mentioned like here, especially with a lot of our maybe our more Western viewers, United States, they may not quite understand the significance. You hear this term remittance. What exactly does that mean? And who are the people that are using it most? Can you maybe paint a picture for us on what that process looked like pre-blockchain?
Yes, happy to do so. So first of all, remittances is as old as history. So Western Union, the sort of the name in the industry is a company that has been out there for 180 years.
180 years.
180 years and 80 and plus. I think even more than that.
Wow.
But the key thing, the very basic thing to understand about a remittance is a P2P, person to person, cross border payment. That's at the very basic, at the very core. However, a remittance is significantly more than that. A remittance means somebody left their home country to find opportunities to care for their families, to find prosperity, and in most cases to follow the American dream, like I said earlier. And so that's the first step of how remittance come to be. It's immigration, right, or migration in general. Then the second thing is that obviously that person, after they acquire a certain level of economical freedom or stability in the country that accepted them, then comes the factor of that factor of these people caring for their families and friends that they left behind, right? So these folks, they make the really hard decision to leave their country, and is leaving a lot of loved ones behind. And so at some point they are thinking about how am I going to care for these folks, right? So then comes that process of people going to a physical store, a Western Union, to pay in cash, and that Western Union would, back in the day, telegraph this back to an office in the home country. Eventually, that became fax machines. Eventually, that became electronic, and then eventually became a little bit more digital. So it's been an evolution, obviously, but all the same is about transmitting that value from one point to another internationally, right? Something that transcends borders, right? And then there's a third factor about remittances that is important to understand is remittances, beyond also caring for people, at all times, it's something that people do for them to retire for. Like so it's sometimes they're looking to build a savings account in their home country. They're looking to build their house so that they can come back to and retire. Sometimes they invest in a business cross-border, so that their brother or somebody else back home, sometimes even their wives or husband, build the business over there, and then they can come back to manage that and retire. So it starts with something that sounds very simple. It's a cross-border payment, but behind it, there's so many complexities that is just beautiful to understand and see.
We hear remittance a lot. What does that actually mean? But you described it so well, the effect that it has on real lives and the dreams that it helps to create.
That's right.
So what are the typical fees that people would deal with in going through that process?
Yeah. And so it goes back to that experience that I just showed. I described a little bit of a remittance via a physical store, right? So a physical store, to answer directly your question, people go there. First of all, they commute to the store. They stand in line, typically 15 to 30 minutes, and they pay $10 to send typically $100 to $300. That's roughly $100 is the medium transaction, 300 and some change is the average transaction. And then there are hidden fees in the FX that companies take, right? So you have $10 that you pay in fixed fees, and then the FX spread, the FX cost of doing the transaction. And it sort of makes sense, right? So a lot of times, obviously, the cost of managing a store, the cost of transmitting, back in the day was transmitting these funds cross-border or this messaging cross-border. But then on the other end, what's happening is that in the other end, it's even harder, right? Because people rely more on cash on that side of the border. And so that means that you have to have retail locations as well that are able to pay out in cash, that they have the cash on hand, that they have extended hours. And all these operations are obviously very expensive, right? And I think the problem here is not just that the remittance is expensive. The other problem is that even though you have digital solutions out there today, when it comes to at least the Latino user, these digital solutions, they haven't earned the trust of these folks, right? Because these are solutions that are built for users that send money anywhere in the world. So you can use these solutions to send money from US to the UK, from the US to Nigeria, from US to the Philippines, anywhere. And so the point being that because it's a product that is built like that, they haven't really solved the fees for specific corridors around the world. So it makes it expensive, and it makes it less reliable, and it makes it less trustworthy. So the Latino user ends up still trusting going to the store, even though they have to pay higher fees. but ultimately they solve the solution for them because they are able to kind of like do the payment for the locations in their home country, or they're able to take care if something goes wrong. They know there's a human being that is there that they can talk to and solve the problem, right? So it's not only about how costly it is, it's also how the digital solutions today haven't been able to kind of like earn the trust and build something that is tailored for the Latino needs.
Interesting. Huh. So tell us now, walk us through the creation of Félix.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming, knowing all of these hurdles, all of these obstacles, and specific needs of the LatAm user, I'm curious to know, how did you design Félix, and if you could walk through the audience, what makes it so significantly different than what exists today?
Of course, happy to do that. And very briefly, before I show you what we're proud of, like I said earlier, I'm an immigrant here in the US. So the first thing that I had to solve for, I had to hack my way into getting a student loan. And so, after just a few days really in the US, I knew that there was a gap between access to financial services as an immigrant um, versus how it should be, right? It should be easy to get access to these things, even as a person that is, for someone that is a non-US person, right? And so fast forward that very quickly. So I lived in California and Texas for some time, and at some point as well, my family also migrated here, and we had to hack our way into sending things to my grandmother back home. And so some of the things that the way people do this is interesting because sometimes people just send Zelle locally in the US, and then that person has a local account, and then they do a local payment, and all these things to kind of like reduce the cost of the transaction or reduce the friction that exists today. And it's just interesting to see that these things happen today, right? And so,
Right.
But then I think even more interestingly, having lived in California and Texas, I've been able to learn and really started to really deeply admire those migrant workers, mostly Mexican migrant workers that come to this country to work really hard to send money back to their families, right? And all these things were in my head. And at some point when I was in business school, I knew I wanted to build something around financial service, access to better financial services. And I stumbled upon this graph where it showed how remittances had been growing like crazy for the last 50 years and how people would still go to the store, right? And so when I went out with my co-founder to deeply understand these users, I started to see first that people really trust the store. It's super important. But secondly, that people would come out of the store, take a picture of the receipt, and send it over WhatsApp to their family member, right? So in a way, WhatsApp was part of the habit of the transaction, right? They would go, come into the store, stand in line, pay $10 to send $100, send a picture and use WhatsApp and say, hey, here's the receipt. That's the ID number that you need to take to the store so you can pick up the cash. And say hello to grandma for me, that sort of thing. And we at the same time we were following all these rules around building MVPs and whatnot, and everything that we had built had failed so far in trying to solve this issue. And then we stumbled, after a lot of observation, we saw that people were on WhatsApp, right? And so we said to ourselves, why not build this on WhatsApp and just make the experience there and see what happens, right? And that's when we started seeing real traction with people that we had met. We've seen that people would use it again. We'd see that people would tell their friends about it. And then most importantly, it's about what people say, right? And we would hear people, one person in particular, Ophelia, she, at some point after using Félix for some time, she told us how she called us and she said, what's your address? And we're like, what? This is weird. What do you need our address for? And so she said, I just want to send you flowers because I'm so thankful for Félix. And I send money to my family and they built a flower farm back home. I just want to show you how the flowers look.
Oh, wow.
And this to us was something like, okay, there is something special here on this product, on this service. That was the inspiration to build what Félix is today, which is this chat-based platform for Latinos in the US to care for what matters back home, right? But not to keep you curious about it, but let me show you the product. So essentially, obviously, this was so the product that we had back then is much better. Back then, we had something super scrappy that we put together. But today, the way it works is everything happens on WhatsApp. So you don't have to download any app. You don't talk to any human being. You go to our WhatsApp, which is already on the hands of roughly 80% of the Latino population in the US. So we're already in their pockets. And so they send a message to our bot. And in this case, in Spanish, so I'll be translating. So in this case, I say hello. And the bot greets them with what we call the main menu, which is one of the cool things that is happening with WhatsApp today, where it's allowing us to build these sort of intuitive interfaces with buttons and menus. And in this case, when we greet the user,
right, and this is happening right in WhatsApp.
Right in WhatsApp, and it's all super quick.
That's cool.
And in this case, the first thing that is happening is you see that you have menus with buttons, and the user can click a button. In this case, we're welcoming the user, well, briefly explaining what Félix is, and they can click an option to send money, or they can just click to ask more information if they're curious about any particular thing, right? In this case, they click send money, right? And this is where the transactional flow starts. But it also allows me to show the second cool thing that is happening on WhatsApp, right? And so with WhatsApp today, what is happening is that it's allowing companies like Félix to interact with the user via APIs with our own intelligence, right? So on the back, we have an AI chatbot that is understanding what the user is saying, right? And so in this case, the bot asks how much you want to send. This is today's exchange rate. But the user here, they can chat as if they're chatting with their grandmother. And they just have to say, 100 pesos or $100. They can put it in numbers, in letters, in currency, different things, which is what happens a lot. It's just a normal, natural conversation. And the bot on the back is going to understand. In this particular example, I'm putting 100 pesos, it's misspelled. And the bot understands that it meant pesos. And so it's saying your payment is going to be $5.64, right? And then it asks, okay, who are you going to send it to, right? And they need to put their full name. And in this case, we recognize as well the first name, middle name, last names, all these things for two reasons. Because first, we got to run people through the KYC part. We got to run it through Sanchez list, and we have to have the full name. But also because on the other end, they're going to the beneficiary is going to get asked for their ID. And so we need to make sure that the name matches, right? So we also, on the back, we have intelligence that extracts the name and last name of the people in a very natural way. Then we need to ask for the city where they live. In this case, again, we can put it abbreviated, in this case, CDMX. It understands that's Mexico City. We ask the user how they want their beneficiary to receive the money, whether it's cash or a bank account. In this case, we enable a cash payout. This is the other cool part about our product, right? That even though we're innovating in the AI, we're innovating in the crypto component that is on the back end, we're still allowing users to pick it up in cash, right? That's what they want. That's what they need. And so we allow them to pick up the money in more than 90,000 locations in Mexico.
Wow.
And we have a list
and that goes back to what you said earlier, is that relationship, that trust that they have with their local shops. That's amazing.
That's exactly right. And it's super important because not only we need to have cash, I mean, the cash operation is expensive, but it allows us to build a trust with the user that's saying, hey, if you want to get it as you always get it, we'll do that, right? And we have some of the big names in Mexico that allows us to convey to the user. You can still do it or you can still receive it as you used to, and it's just easy for them to select those locations, right? So in this case, they can choose it from a menu. They can just type it in. In this case, they type in Electra. Once a user confirms, we do send them through to a payments page. Right? Okay. In this payment page, outside WhatsApp is where they would put their card information. Obviously, inside WhatsApp, we cannot collect the payment information. So we have to take them outside WhatsApp. That's where it's just a checkout page where they would put their card information. And for security reasons, even if you have, in this case, you're seeing that my card is already stored, you just confirm with your CVV code, right? In this case, we ensure that security, which is super important when we're talking about payments, right? So in this case, the user just confirms their CVV code. And here on the back is where the magic is happening with crypto, right? And you see that the user is only seeing dollars and pesos.
Right.
Back end, we're converting this to USDC. moving it instantly to Mexico via the Stellar chain, converting it to pesos, optimizing how we convert those crypto to fiat, and then disbursing locally to that end store or to that end deposit or bank account. And lo and behold, to our original finding with the receipt, the user gets a receipt as an image in a beautiful way. You see that the reference code is super big because that's what
Right.
they show, right? That's what they're going to send to their family members. And that's it. That's the magic of the FélixBot.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I know we have a chat coming up with Mauricio. We're going to go a little bit deeper into some of the tech behind it. But I mean, what you just showed is brilliant, I have to say. It's brilliant in its simplicity that they're still using WhatsApp. They're still getting a message from their friend, family member through WhatsApp, which they're used to. And to a lot of people that are watching, WhatsApp it's especially to, I would say, it's so popular for, I know in LatAm and the Caribbeans, like I have family that are Caribbean, and they introduced me. I'm someone that's in tech. People know about it recently after the big Facebook acquisition, but for years, WhatsApp was being used in amongst my Latin friends, amongst my Caribbean friends and family members for years. So this is huge that it all blends nicely into it. And then I love the addition of the receipt, by the way, because that's something that they can relate to.
Yeah.
The remittance market is really big. I was looking at some numbers, and it said that remittances from U.S. to Mexico actually reached a record 55.9. You might as well say $60 billion in 2022. And these transfers accounted for 95% of Mexico's total remittance volume. So, that relationship is really major. How has adoption been in general that you've seen since you've launched this product?
Yeah, no, and definitely this industry, like I said, it's not only about the sheer just nominal number, but it's also about the growth. This number has grown between 10 to 15% year over year for the last 15 years, right?
Wow.
So it's nonstop. We are young in the market. We launched 16 months ago, and even though we launched very recently, we've sent now almost $60 million just to Mexico. We started doing remittances to Guatemala and Honduras, which are also huge corridors. And ultimately, what we're seeing is it's not only about that volume, but it's also about our growth. We're growing roughly 25% in CMGR. Last month alone, we sent $9 million. So we continue seeing that growth. It's interesting because Circle in particular, they are the ones that are seeing those USDC being minted on the back. So they see all this traction. They see all the numbers on their systems. But it's great to see that people, it's hard to get earn the trust of these users. But it's beautiful to see when they, to your point, it's easy to use. But from the words of our users, Félix is just fast and easy, right? So once they come around, like, okay, can I trust this? They just see the magic, and we see a lot of recurrency as well. So they go to the second, third, and fourth transaction. So it's good to see that the traction, the growth is there.
And so, and on that note that you brought up, as far as on the back end, working with Circle and USDC, describe to me, when you were building this product, how important was your decision in choosing a stable coin, and what were some of the aspects of USDC that, I would imagine this is your family, your constituents. So you are entrusting USDC and sending it in as a tool that they can utilize for, in your own words, their businesses, their retirement, their future. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Definitely. And it's so important because in fintech in general, it's so important to choose the right partners because you're marrying them literally. And in fintech, it's regulated. You gotta go right by the users. So it's so important to have the right partners, right? And so, for us, like I said at the beginning, I've known about crypto for years. It was clear to me that crypto came to solve cross-border payments as an infrastructure in general. That's how I think about it. And so for me, it was clear that crypto had to play a part. But then obviously, and that's as a sort of like access to capital, but also as an instantaneous method of flow of funds. But then obviously when you talk about crypto, if you're going to move Bitcoin from one point to another, those few minutes that the Bitcoin moves from the US to Mexico, that Bitcoin can go up and down really fast, right? So for us, it was clear that we had to use stablecoin as well. But we needed to have a stablecoin that was reliable, right? And then when you see things in the market around stablecoins, you start to see that you have companies that are doing shady things, companies that are doing experimenting, if you will, like all these companies that went down last year around algorithmic stability of the value, which they didn't work out. So it's sort of like it was easy also to narrow it down to just a few. But then obviously USDC stood out to us because USDC Circle make sure that USDC is backed by US Treasuries. These US Treasuries are under constant supervision by the consultants and these bodies are making sure that the values that the USDC is backed up, and also these treasuries are also held in regulated institutions in the US, right? So all these things are also putting like the green flags,
right,
the signs that stablecoin is going to be safe, right? And so it's for us, it was exciting to see at the beginning of our journey that Circle was willing to partner up with us. And also because obviously they shared our vision of providing a solution that really makes it easy for folks to just move value across borders.
Yes, equity prosperity. That's right there in our mission. So, one other thing I wanted to touch bases on is you mentioned it, but within your demo, your use of AI. Now we've seen, the use of AI is something that we've seen growing over the last, I'll say, especially the last 2 years, right? The last 2 years, we've seen it really grow. You know, you coming into the space within the last 18 months, this is a major impact and decision to bring AI in. It
Yep.
seems very exciting and cool the way that you showcased it. Tell us about that decision and where is AI playing a role?
Definitely. And it's interesting because we are very proud that we were bullish on chat and WhatsApp before even ChatGPT was cool, right? And so
Right.
and now ChatGPT is making even more noise. But the fact that we are innovating first for the Latino in the US is something that no other company is doing, right? Because a lot of times the innovation comes from products that are built to other segments and then trickles down to this Latino immigrant, right? But we're bringing this innovation first. We're chat-based first, and we're leveraging AI as a tool to make users interact with technology much simpler, right? And a big believer in that. In that, there is currently a shift in how users are interacting with technology in general. Everybody builds an app. Everything is around an app. We believe that it has to be just human, right? It has to be so simple to use that it feels like you're talking with your grandmother, and your grandmother can also use it too. And so that's why this is the value that AI brings to the table, that it makes it super easy, super human, conversational first, and straightforward and intuitive, right? And so we're very bullish in this model around leveraging AI to make it chat-based. And we're excited to see that our users are liking this method as well.
Yeah, I love it as well. I got to play around with it. It's really cool. So you got to check it out. Share this video and get everybody to join and just see how easy it is to utilize this app. Before we wrap up, what is the future of Félix? What can we see going into 2024?
Yeah, a lot of exciting stuff. In terms of features, some things that are very cool that are happening. we are about to release something that is called voice to remittance. So people are going to be able to send a voice note to WhatsApp. The bot's going to understand what they're saying, and it's going to translate that into just a transaction, right? So that's pretty cool. That's going to happen soon. Then something that we're very excited about as well is, I said earlier, we're focused on Mexico now, on U.S. to Mexico corridor, but we do want to help other Latin American immigrants in the U.S. So we recently launched Guatemala and Honduras. We want to expand to El Salvador, Nicaragua first in Central America. Then the Caribbean, you mentioned the Caribbean. So Dominican Republic is a big corridor. Then we want to go to South America, Colombia, huge corridor, and then beyond that. So it's self-serve more users. And even beyond that, our vision is to become the companion for the Latino through their journey as immigrants. And that means being able to offer more financial services that are tailored to the needs of these folks.
Man, I'm excited. I can't wait to do a follow-up video over the years. I wish we should do a check-in yearly just to see as this journey grows. It's incredible. I love what you're doing. I'm excited to see the faces of folks utilizing this product. It's such a great example, I think, of the potential that USDC, blockchain technology, that marriage can really bring to change lives and make real impact. So thank you for all that you do. For everyone watching, make sure we're going to have some links in the description where you can go directly to Félix and try it out for yourself. Give us your feedback. Give them your feedback on your experiences. Send flowers. Hey, well, I'm sure they'll love that. Send the flowers. That's great. I think that's a great story. We'll also have a video with Mauricio coming up. You can click in the description or one of the pop-ups here where you can go a little bit deeper, a little more deeper explanation of the tech behind it. So that way you can get a better understanding of why blockchain and USDC is so important for innovations like what you've seen here with Félix to be birthed. So thank you, Manuel, for this time, for this conversation. I felt like I learned a lot. So really appreciate this dialogue between us.
Thank you, Sam. And you have my word. We can check back in the future. Thank you so much for inviting me. Excited to see what's next.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Continue to check in. Visit our YouTube channel for this and more incredible stories of USDC. Take care.